It's over something.
You get to shut up and let you folks go watch them if you'd like to, or if you'd like to wander around, if you want to stay and talk to me about something, as you see, but all failing all of that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. I hope this wasn't quite.
The sun's coming out.
I'll tell you a little bit more about the roles of these musical warriors, and maybe there'll be time for any questions that you may have at the end. So the instruments that they carry, by virtue of their volume, were important tools of communication. On a loud or smoky battlefield, drummers often acted as stretcher bearers, helping to evacuate the wounded, but could also relay a series of calls like advance, retreat, or ceasefire. And they could do this either on the drum or on the bugle. Most of a soldier's time was not actually spent on the battlefield, but in forts or garrisons, much like this one, engaged in a dull routine of drills, parades, and tedious manual labor. Now the fifes and drums would help regulate a soldier's schedule, waking them up in the morning with the reveille, setting out soldiers for parade with a troop, and forming up working parties with the Pioneers' March. At the end of the day, a retreat would have been played to signal the end of a soldier's working day, and assemble them for the roll call and the reading of daily orders. Over the time, retreat evolved into an elaborate and time-honored ceremony, and often local civilians, perhaps even from the town of York, would come out to hear the pipes and drums perform. So the first piece we're going to be playing for you today is one such example of the retreat. And you'll notice it has a very mournful melody to lament the end of another day. So here it is, a retreat. A retreat! Yep. A retreat! A retreat! Drums. Ready? Drums. Beat! At ease. Easy. But some grew tired. Rogues march. Drums. Ready. Drums. Beat. But music can also help keep soldiers out of trouble, helping them unwind and relax in barracks, or by buoying spirits after a long march or during a harsh Canadian winter. Dancing and singing were popular pastimes of the era, and the music you would have heard here at this fort 200 years ago reflected the diverse variety of soldiers in the Canadian Fencibles. About half the regiment was French-Canadian, while others came from England, Scotland, Ireland, United States, and further afield. Two of our original drummers actually came from modern-day Germany and Latvia, and the folk music they would have brought with them would have been played to remind soldiers of home, be it Montreal or Aberdeen. So the next piece we're going to be playing for you is a traditional Scottish folk tune known as Logan Water. Here it is, Logan Water. Logan Water, drums, yup, drums. Accent, shunt, Logan Water, drums. Ready? Drums. Beat. Yep. Act 10. Shun. See the conquering hero come. Drums. Ready. Drums. Beat. Rest. Drums. At ease. Easy. Step. Step. Step.
So as you might have gathered, this is the 3:30 artillery demonstration service. You're in the right spot. The men and women you see coming up ahead of you are members of the 4-year guards. These are again high school university students who get paid as their summer job to wear hot wool uniforms and fire our muskets and cannons and music performances for you guys. So these guys are dressed as British artillerists, British gunners. So yes, most British troops wore the iconic red, but guys who have used the big cannons, who have used artillery, would have actually worn a distinctive royal blue uniform to distinguish them as a senior service in the army and distinguish them. Firing for you guys today are our reproduction smooth bore 6-pounder field gun. Today I'm going to refer to this thing as a gun. Fun fact, yes, and when most people call this a cannon, and it is a cannon. And if this cannon was used on a ship, it's called a cannon. If it's used on land, it's called a gun. It's the same thing, but it is a gun if it's on land, cannon if it's on a ship. This is specifically a 6-pounder, which means it required a 6-pound weighted cannonball. That's how you gauge long guns back then, was by the weight of the shot. So in this case, A smaller gun like these would have 3, 6, and 9 pounders, whereas the larger guns you see on the walls of the fort are in these cases 24 and 32 pounders. So the guns can come in a variety of sizes, but they all essentially, variety of sizes and weights, but they would have all essentially functioned exactly the same way, but firing different types and size of ammunition at different ranges, obviously. But they all essentially fire the same way. They're going to do what first was called a dry run, basically going through the motions of cleaning out the gun and loading it to make sure no one threw a pop can down the barrel between the brakes or anything, make sure the gun is safe and secure. We're really actually go about loading the actual blank charge. They are obviously going to be firing a blank, so gunpowder, lots of smoke and noise, making extra at the end. The walls and funnels will last 12 to that. But the loading procedure is the same. So once we go through the actual dry run, I'll go explain so we're doing step by step. But they have taken the boxes, would have had an immediate expense round of ammunition from the gun and placed it in the rear. Historically, they've actually placed a lot farther back, but that way, if there's a case on the axis, the ammunition is not where most people are, and then use a series of ammunition runners to basically ferry ammunition back and forth continually. A gun of this size, this is typically what's called a field gun. It's on a field carriage with much larger wheels compared to the walls of the fort. These guns, 3, 6, and 9 pounders, were field artillery. They're essentially meant to be taken by armies into battle to act as anti-personnel guns. They could fire low or warm. It's basically a big corkscrew-looking thing. So they feed down the barrel to make sure there's nothing left down there from the previous shot. Hopefully twist and grab the remnants of the previous cartridge. Then they're taking a wire brush and brushing out the piece. This is actually something which they would not have historically done, but we've actually just added it as an extra safety measure. So basically ignore this step, but just something we've done to basically make sure the barrel doesn't get kicked over too much powder fouling after a while. Now the bottom of the barrel, give it a couple good taps to make sure it's seated at the breech, where the fuse would then be implemented down. A couple good taps to make sure it's seated at the back. And now the person with their hand over the barrel is the ventsman, who has to take a big spike, puncture it through the vent hole into the satchel of gunpowder, which they will then feed a fuse down into. See them puncturing it down right now, puncture the hole into the satchel of gunpowder, feed the vent, and now they take on a fuse. The fuses back then would have just been a feather quill filled with gunpowder. Today we're just using drinking straws. They work exactly the same way. You feed it down. When she moves her hand, you're gonna, guys, it's gonna fire. So if you want to cover your ears, now might be the time to do it. It is going to be loud. Fair warning. Fire! Okay. And now that we've got the whole thing over again. Now, obviously, the loading procedure they're doing with everything, everything nice and slow, nice, slow walking, nice commands. This is a nice, safe speed to do it. Make sure no accidents happen. Also gives us time to explain what they're doing. But obviously, on the battlefield, you want to fire a whole lot faster than this. And this gun could have essentially been fired very, very rapidly, basically firing ammunition, loading it back and forth as fast as you can. Often they might have only spun maybe every third or fourth round. So you couldn't really fire this gun. There's cases of gunners firing these things 5 or 6 times a minute. So if you have an enemy coming on ahead, you won't be able to fire these things very quickly. A gun of this size, depending on the elevation, the amount of powder, could have easily fired a projectile between 500 to 700 yards. When an infantryman's musket can only fire 100 yards, you can imagine this thing has a great advantage to be able to open up an enemy formations often 5 times this it would take before an infantryman can. So you can use these to bombard enemy formations that are coming across the field. The range of these things would have depended, one, on the elevation of the gun barrel, and also the Step. Eyes. Front. Artillery. Quick. March. Step.